Season 3, Episode 8. It's Lonnie.
It's Bree.
It's Nelly.
And we are starting a new series.
Y'all know we
love our series.
Y'all love the series too, though.
Right.
Y'all do.
It's just better that way, you know?
It is. But this series, we are talking about all things family. Family matters. If you listen to our previous episode, I think it was Season 1, Season 2.
Yeah.
Whatever. So we had an episode about family matters, and we're just talking about everything under that scope this series. And today we're talking about family structure, how we were raised, how that's affected us in our adult life, and all that good stuff.
And how we gonna raise our children.
Yeah.
And the importance of talking about these things.
Yes, conversations.
Mm-hmm. All right, so just an overview for our new listeners who may not have heard the first episode of Family Matters. How were y'all raised? What were the family structures? What did your households look like?
I grew up in a 2-parent household up until I was like 18, 19, and then my parents got divorced. I feel like I had like a good childhood. I don't have anything to really complain about. I didn't have a terrible childhood. There were like certain things and certain flaws that I wish that could have been better, as far as like the way that I had like relationships with my mom versus my dad and everything like that. But yeah, I would say that I had a pretty decent childhood.
Yeah, I feel like the same for me pretty much. 2-parent household, my parents are still married. My dad is very much the breadwinner, if you want to put it that way. But my mom is very much the head of the household. And yeah, I really don't have much to complain about. We went to church. Well, most of us went to church.
So strong.
Went to church.
My father didn't go to church, but the rest of us did. That may be a thing, we can dive into later.
That's
but yeah, I mean,
that's interesting, because my household was like that. Like, me and my mom and my sister, we went to church, but my dad didn't go to church. But he grew up, like...
Right.
No, my dad sent us to church with our grandmother. So yeah, it's something we can talk about. So I grew up in 2 households. My mom and dad were never married. They were in a relationship, but we never all were under one roof for long periods of time. So very much split custody my entire life. Weekends, weeks, it was different all throughout. But yeah, that just made me realize, I feel like it made me grow up really fast and have to take on a lot of responsibility earlier. Like even things as small as forgetting books and packing clothes, all of that builds responsibility, and communicating between parents who at times weren't speaking. A lot of times I have felt like I was in the middle, and a lot of kids who are in split custody situations, it's very frequent. So it definitely affected the way I grew up and the pressure that I put on myself. But yeah, that was something that I don't want to provide for my kids at all. God willing.
God willing.
God willing.
And with you saying that, we can jump right into it. What are some things that you do want to pass on to your children, and what are some things that you don't want to pass on to your children?
I think the level of responsibility that I had at a very young age, I want to pass on to my kids. And that's because I feel like a lot of times I have seen people who come out of 2-parent households be very coddled. And I've seen them just kind of have more of a cushion than kids who either grew up with single parents or split custody. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something that, in my experience, that has been one of the reasons why I've been able to be so successful. So definitely the level of responsibility. And then, what was the second part of the question? What I don't want? Oh, the stressor of having to feel like you're always in the middle. Feeling like you have to people please. You want your mom to be happy, but you want your dad to be happy. We should be a united front. It shouldn't be, oh, you have to choose a side. And a lot of my life felt like that tug and pull of, oh, I want to go with mom this weekend, or I don't want to be at dad's house, or, oh, who would you rather stay with if you had the choice? A lot of that, putting that type of decision on a child is traumatic. Like, having to feel like you don't want either one of your parents to be upset with you.
Right.
So trying to please both sides, I feel like one of my coping mechanisms as a child was just like, I would kind of play them against each other in a sense. Like, tell them both, oh, I want to live with you, or I want to live with you.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to make them both happy, but then it end up being a stressor on me at the end of the day because it ends up being he say, she say, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, definitely an experience that made me stronger, but I don't think it was necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still thinking about mine. You go.
I've talked a little bit about it before and in previous episodes, but I think one thing, I'm gonna start with don't want to pass on because that just comes to mind quicker. One thing that I feel like my mom not consciously did, but she did do was she kind of minimized like anxiety and like mental health issues. And so my dad has a lot of anxiety, and when he would have it, she'd be like, oh, he having an episode, like I don't know what's wrong with him, why he act like that, da 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 da. And she still does it sometimes today. And I just grew up like, oh, is that not a real thing? Like, is this medical? Like, what is it actually? But then when I started, having anxiety episodes, I was fortunate enough to already be educated about it personally, outside of the household, so I knew what it was, and I was able to recognize what it was for him as well. But I think just educating your children about mental health issues and about anxiety and that kind of stuff, because it's so common, especially in the Black community, is healthier than just saying, oh, I don't believe in that, pray about it. Like, that's,
It's the pray about it for me.
Yeah, like, I used to be like, I'll pray about it, but is that really solving the current issue?
Right.
So, that's one thing I don't want to pass on. Honestly, I have so many things that I do want to pass on. I don't even know, like, what to choose.
Top, number one.
My mom was very transparent. I feel like with me specifically, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm the only girl. I don't know if it's because I'm just more mature than my brothers, which is true. But I feel like she never really hid anything from me. And maybe that's because I was always asking questions. So she, I was the only one asking. So she was like, you asked, I'll tell you the answer. But she was very open about finances and still is to this day. She's very open about like relationship, like, if she was mad at my dad, she never was like, oh, no, everything's fine. It's like, I need my space, and that's what's going on. Of course, it wasn't like she was exposing me to it when I was super young, like taking away my innocence or anything. But I think that she did a good job of not trying to hide when something is wrong or when, it needs to be addressed.
Right.
So,
something that I want to pass on probably would be individuality. I don't know if I said that right. But just like doing things like on your own and being able to provide for yourself and not having to depend on other people. It kind of like ties into like your idea of like responsibility and having like that certain level of responsibility, because like from a young age, I've always like, even if I didn't learn it from my parents, I've always learned it on my own from like friends or other family members. So I was able to like grow up in a way where I can take care of myself if I really needed to. Like, I know the different steps of life. I mean, obviously I'm only 24, so I'm still growing, but I still know like the different steps that I need to take to just make sure that I'm good as an individual. Something that I don't want to pass on will probably be the idea that you have to be perfect at all times, because I feel like, especially my mom has put like these expectations on me to always be like perfect, make straight A's, like go to college, get a degree, get a full-time job, get paid, live on your own, be married, like all these different expectations. And I felt like I didn't really have any room to make mistakes. And if I did make mistakes, then it was always like, well, you know better. Instead of it being like, oh, well, you made a mistake, this is how you can learn from it, and you're going to grow, and as you get older, you're going to learn from those mistakes. So I never want my kids to feel like they have to be perfect at all times, because ultimately, as you grow, you're going to make mistakes. Life happens. You just have to learn from it.
I want to dive into that a bit more, because I feel like a lot of Black kids, or like our kids at our age, a lot of Black young adults were put under that pressure of like perfectionism. A lot of us deal with that as an issue, and a lot of us are still working through it because I don't know if it's like a Prince George's County thing. Like seriously, because our parents are like, you know, you're afforded all of these opportunities, so we expect nothing less of you. You know, like I feel like that might play into a part of it because it's like they didn't come from the slums. Like our parents, if you live in Prince George's County, to some extent you're successful. Like let's just be clear about it. Like, you know, you're not living in the slums. Nothing about where you live is, you know, a hood. I mean, exception for some parts. Yeah. But you weren't raised in the hood. Very suburbs, especially your Largo, like Upper Marlboro, Bowie, that like type of area. Like you were afforded some type of privilege. So I think that plays a part into why our parents don't feel like we have a reason we don't have a reason to fail.
Yeah, I think that it's heightened for like the Prince George's County areas and other black affluent areas. But I also think, you know, everything relates back to, you know, our ancestors in slavery times. But I think it's really a prominent thing in the black community specifically to, you know, not really, you know, it's higher standards because it's so much adversity for us specifically that we really don't have a whole bunch of room to fail. And then on top of that, for Prince George's County kids, it's like, you don't have a whole bunch of room to fail already, and then I already put you on this platform where you're not having to work, you know, extra hard to get out the hood or nothing. So you should then be really like on top of your game. So I definitely see what you're saying, that in this area, our parents be like, you ain't grow up how I grew up.
You in this 5-bedroom house, this 3-4, like, you don't want for nothing, you don't need for nothing. Because I feel like that's something we also have to be clear about. Like, people always want to glamorize, like, being from the slums and being from the hood. But that's one thing, like, I did not grow up like that. I never needed for anything. I never wanted. I never went to sleep hungry. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. But also, like, that don't mean I gotta be perfect.
Right. That don't mean that you got, like, other issues going on, because I feel like with those standards come, like, your mental health being put on the back burner. Yes. And it's like, you are so worried about, like, trying to make sure that you're doing good for your family, trying to make sure that you're pleasing your parents, trying to make sure that you graduating from school, going to college, getting a job, like, it's just so many layers to it. But then at the end of the day, that's what leads to burnout. And I feel like burnout is very, very common, especially in the black community, because we're so focused on trying to please everyone else and trying to be better than our previous selves that we're not really focusing on our mental and what makes us healthy and taking care of ourselves.
Right. You get so caught up in competition instead of collaboration, and like that also just speaks to, like, people say all the time, like, the DMV is a crab barrel because everyone's always like dragging once somebody gets to the top, instead of pulling people up, we want to drag them back down.
And that's also the other reason why a lot of people move from the DMV to other areas like Atlanta, because it's like, that's a whole nother conversation.
I was gonna say, Atlanta is not always the solution, because some people
be coming back.
Not for real.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there is something about Prince George's County that, you know,
it's a bougie to it. It's like an uppity atmosphere, and you know, sometimes we play into it because that's just like how we were raised.
We do, but then you have those people who, like, are from PG County, but then they act like they from the hood.
Oh my God.
You know, but they live in a big 5-bedroom house on Church Road.
That the video shoots be in their house.
Exactly.
Like, no, sir.
I feel like in high school, you could really see that difference, because especially at Wise. Oh my gosh. Wise was regional when we went, and it's not regional anymore. But it was like kids from the hood. It was kids from the bougie parts. It was kids from everywhere. It was just a whole melting pot. And so you could really see, like, the differences in, like, the people who were fake bougie, that were fake hood, who were just regular in the middle, which I feel like I was always in, and I was, like, so confused. But yeah, people be like, you're not bougie, but you're not hood, but you kind of bougie. I'm like, leave me alone.
But
Please.
see, I went to DC schools, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, you could tell, like, I was a measy, and I wasn't one of those. I was never going to go to a DC school and act like I was from DC. Like, I was born in a DC hospital, but I was taken from that DC hospital right to Maryland. Like, so I never tried to put on that facade, but, like, you could tell, like, it's a certain way that we carry ourselves, and a certain way that you could look at somebody from DC and be like, oh, they from DC. Like, you know, people just have that energy about them.
Yeah.
But, you know, people think that because you're from Maryland and you were raised a certain way that you don't have, and I need another word other than trauma to use, but, like, that you don't have
baggage. Yeah, but I feel like you can use trauma, because I think the word...
That sounds so dramatic, though.
I know, but
I think we talked about that.
Yeah, like, the word trauma has such a negative connotation to it. Like, everything that's traumatic in your life doesn't have to be, like, so bad to the point where it, like, messes you up.
Yeah. Right, because I got PTSD from driving to Baltimore, from going to town. No, seriously.
You know I got it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, me and Nelly talk about it all the time. Like, driving up there now is really a traumatic experience.
Yeah, it really is.
So, like, things like that, which seem little, but, like, are real.
Yeah.
But, go ahead.
I wasn't, you go ahead.
So I was just gonna, like, go into, like, the whole theme of, like, family trauma and things that, even though people might view that you were just raised, like, you know, you ain't had no issues growing up. What are things that, like, really bothered you or really affected you growing up that you, like, can remember? It can be moments or just in things in general.
I don't know. I feel like that's such a loaded question, because now I gotta rethink and go back into like years of my childhood. I don't know. I just feel like well, for me personally, like, anybody who knows my dad is very, like, nonchalant. He don't hold no conversation unless he really know you. Even if you know you, he ain't hold no conversation for more than 5 minutes. But I just feel like, for me personally, growing up, just him being so nonchalant and not really being vocal kind of affected me in a way. I feel like not affected me personally, but affected me when it comes to my relationships and different friendships. Because now I'm starting to become, like, that nonchalant person. And I don't really like that, because I like to express myself. But that's just what I grew up around. Like, that's just what I know. So, I don't know. It's like a weird thing.
Well, the one thing was the whole ignore mental health thing, but not so much trauma, but something that I didn't really recognize until I got older, and my mom never talked about it, was the fact that, so my dad is a DC police officer, well, detective, but he was a police officer when I was younger, and those are rigorous hours. And so while he was providing for the home, he wasn't home. So, like, yes, my parents were married and I lived in a 2-parent household, but I don't have any memories of him as a child being there until I was, like, in middle school, I think. And so when I was probably in high school when I just started, you know, asking questions, and one day I was like, you know, I don't, like, when my mom was talking, I was like, I don't really remember Daddy, you know, being around. She was like, 'cause he wasn't. Like, just like that. 'Cause he wasn't. I was like, huh? Like, what does that mean? But it was such, like, an eye-opening moment to know that even though your situation can be ideal, sometimes that's still not enough. And so him not being present in the home, I feel like as I got older, I was like, dang, like, we missed a lot of stuff that, you know, I could have had good memories about, because I think what triggered it was me watching him with my younger brother, and he was more active and, like, there, and I'm like, man, he around a lot now, like, why don't I remember this? And so I think that's what kind of triggered it. So that was something that, not traumatic, but like we said, traumatic.
Do you think that has impacted, though, your relationships, or even, like, the way you are with men? Because, you know, people love to play the daddy issues card.
I don't, only because I feel like I realized it early enough. Like, I don't think I don't even know what kind of issues that would cause, really. But no, I don't. I think that I definitely made an effort to like spend more time with him as I got older. So maybe it affected it there. I'm a daddy's girl through and through. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I am a little more like protective of him, and like, you know, I'm always asking him where he at. Like, it's like I always keep tracking him or something. But yeah, I don't think other relationships, no.
That was gonna be my next question. Do you feel like y'all relationship is total different?
Yeah, completely. And he just has had personal growth in that area too. Like, I think he really, like, when my younger brother's coming up, like, I think he really realized, you know, now I have the opportunity to spend more time at home. And I don't blame him. Like, you know, he was providing for the family. You gotta do what you gotta do, especially as a police officer. They request a lot of them.
Right.
And even now, when, like, during the pandemic, when they put them on 12-hour shifts, I did not see him. And I was like, dang, this sucks. Like, I'm used to him being around. Like, so it's definitely something that you have to be prepared for. And I feel like I learned a lot from watching my mom handle it. And just other police officers I know, they're like, yeah, it's a thing to be married to a police officer. Like, you have to be able to handle a certain amount of stuff.
Stress.
So, yeah.
Stress.
Yeah.
I mean, any of those like essential
Like doctors.
Yeah.
Firefighters.
Anything that requires 12-hour shifts.
And even just with police officers and firefighters specifically, like the danger of it. Like, you might get a call in the middle of the night, military, like you might get a call in the middle of the night and something didn't happen. And you gotta just be ready to deal with that. Like,
yeah, I'm not ready.
Yeah, I don't know if I could. I don't know. I'm built for it naturally because that's the lifestyle I've lived all my life. But I don't know if I would want to marry
Like your adult life. Yeah. Nah.
I think for me, like some moments that stick out is like I remember bringing home like my first report card with a B on it. Like, and I was a straight A student through, I think like 7th or 8th grade. And even in 7th grade, I was taking Algebra 1. Like, in 7th grade, you're supposed to be taking, like, something that ain't Algebra 1. I was, like, I was 2 years ahead because I remember being done with the math at 10th grade.
Yeah.
So, like, I remember getting my first B, and the response from my dad specifically was, well, why wasn't it an A? Or, like, even in college, like, why is it an A minus? And not, like, instead of praising me for like the accomplishment, it was why wasn't it better? And I think that really impacted stuff that I'm trying to unlearn now. Like, if I feel like I put my best into it, like, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
It don't have to be 110%. Like, I don't have to get an A+++. Like, if a C is my best effort forward, then I rightfully so deserve that C. Like, and I'm gonna be happy about that C. Do I want to see? No. But if I know on the back end that I really worked my butt off and I was putting in the hours to study and really try to figure out, like, then that has to be good enough for me. And just, like, not needing that validation from my dad specifically is, like, something that I'm working on. And granted, it's because he was so involved in my life. Like, my dad was the dad that sat through tumbling classes and gymnastics and didn't miss any performance, any show, any award ceremony, donuts for dads. Like, he was at everything. So, like, I don't fault him for it. Like, I'm not saying that made him any less of a dad.
Right.
It's just something that I think he unconsciously does.
Yeah.
And that's because his dad wasn't in his life. So he didn't really have that father figure to, like, show him how to be a dad. He's really just trying to be a better dad than the dad he didn't have.
Right.
So I can understand that, but for me as an adult, it's something that I am trying to unlearn.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like, note how our parents were raised by their parents and, like, how that whole thing, like, trickles down, because I can kind of relate to that whole thing with, like, being, like, the straight A student or, like, making A's and B's. Like, bringing a C home or a B home was, like, not even acceptable. And I think for my mom, it wasn't acceptable for her because when she was growing up, her mom was the same way towards her. And my mom, she paid her way through college. Like, she worked 2 jobs. She bought her first car, like, on her own. She did all of that on her own. So ultimately, she expects for me to do all of that on my own and to have a higher standard for myself rather than just kind of skating by, in her words.
So, and I want to touch on that because I think that it also is different for like boys and girls. So like Nelly, you specifically, because I know you have older and younger brothers, do you feel like the expectation was different? Even like, let's just use school for example, like the level of success that is required, is it different?
Absolutely. There's definitely double standards. I think that for my older brother, we say this all the time in my house, like, he really is a test dummy. Like, a lot of things was just like first try and failed with him. And so he just kind of moved on along, lived his life. And I mean, they expected stuff of him, but it was not anywhere near what they expected of me. And even of my little brother, and even though there are still differences between me and my younger one, I feel like I, of course, always got the most expectations because I think really because I was the only girl, am the only girl, and they were just like, yeah. And I was always just more mature than my age, so it was like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. He's still young, or he already passed, so we missed the opportunity with him. So it was like middle child, only girl, most mature, handing her all the responsibility. So.
Oh yeah, my dad has even like made it be known that the expectation for my younger brother won't be the same. Like, and you know, he attested to that. You know, we're just different children, which you know we are different children. But I know that gender has a large piece to do with it. Like, I think that sometimes parents like to use boys in sports as a reason to excuse academics. And I was active. I was dancing. And I could never use dance as an excuse as to why I wasn't getting my homework done.
Right.
Like, I would get looked at 30 Shades of Crazy if I was like, oh yeah, I didn't do my homework tonight because I had dance. But let a boy be like, oh, football practice ran over, so I ain't have time, so it's late or something.
But I think it really highlights like probably like 2 or 3 real problem areas in the Black community. One is the whole like gender expectations. Like, a lot of times we always, football will take you far. Football will make you successful. But dances are successful. There are people who dance for a living. I mean, why couldn't dance have been that thing for you that made you rich? I mean, there's a, I guess, another double standard, or just this idea that women's sports aren't going to take you as far as men's sports will. And that's not necessarily true. Is there a pay gap? Absolutely. Yes. But you can still be successful doing it. And then also that just boys can't explore their options as much as girls can. Like, I feel like it's really a disservice to the boys at the end of the day because you're not giving them that opportunity to be a rocket scientist or do whatever. You're saying here's sports, that's what we expect you to be good at. But it's like, they could be good at, like they could be good at so many other genius. They could be a whole math
pieces.
Like, it's just so, and I feel like girls, not unfortunately, but are afforded a lot more opportunities when we are younger than boys are.
Because I did everything from golf to cheerleading to all of it. So in closing, I want to ask you all, like, now as adults, how are y'all relationships with your parents, and how have they changed throughout the years?
So we kind of have that space away from each other to kind of like breathe and like process like our emotions and like just different things. I feel like I talk to her a lot more now because I'm not under her roof. Like, I'll randomly text her, I'll FaceTime her all the time. I'm over her house all the time, like now. So, but with my dad, I don't know. I feel like our relationship has gotten a little bit more distant. I'm not sure if it's because of the pandemic or because of like, you know, what's going on in his personal life, but I don't know. It's just weird. I feel like I've had like a closer relationship with my dad when I was younger. before I went to college, and then after I graduated, it was just kind of like, okay, well, I'll talk to him like here and there or whatever, or like if I need something, he's always like, if I call him, he's always there.
Right.
Like that's not nothing to like put down or anything, but yeah, I don't know.
And to add on to Bree's question, we can all answer it. Have you been able to have this conversation with them about the things that, you know, you learned from them that they could have done better, or?
I feel like it's easier to have that conversation with my dad, because my dad is just very, he's very open. Now that I'm an adult, with my mom, I haven't really like explored that option to have that conversation with her, because like I want to be transparent here. Like in the past, if that conversation was to happen, she's the type of person, she will get like very defensive when it's not really like, it's not me like putting her down or saying like she's doing something like so bad that she's like a bad mom or anything. It's just me expressing like how I react and how I feel about the decisions and like the things that she's done throughout like my life. But I think now if I, you know, do decide to like sit down and have a conversation, I think it'll go pretty well. I think she'll be more open to it versus like a few years ago.
Next question.
My relationship with my parents is actually really good. I'm still under their roof, but I think because, like I said, I've just always been super mature, so they really just see me as an adult now. Like, I don't know. By the time I went off to college, they were like, all right, you pretty grown. Like, you know, we can have regular conversation. And then I've always had open communication with my mom specifically. And my dad is just kind of like, either she tell him, or, you know, we'll talk about it some other time. But now I feel like, you know, I approach them about pretty much everything. My mom knows pretty much everything. Like, and then my dad, he's just super I want to say secular, but not secular, because that's like people think of music. But because my mom is so like grounded in faith, and like sometimes she can have a very closed mindset on specific things, that I would rather go to my dad and be like, you know, hey, what's your thoughts on this? And then we'll talk about it with my mother at the same time. But yeah, I have a extremely open relationship with them. I've talked about things that, you know, growing up, I'm like, y'all was a little wild, like, you know, so we have those conversations all the time, really. We make it more like jokey and fun, but they understand that what we're saying, because my brothers talk about it too.
That's funny that you say that, because I was going to mention that. Does it take value away from what you're saying if you're joking and laughing about it? Because I've approached some things like have come up and we ha-haing about it, but for real, that traumatized me as a child.
I don't know. I feel like it depends. It honestly depends on like the relationship you have with your parents. Like it depends, because I feel like if your parents know like how you communicate, like they would understand. Like even if it's in a joking way, you're like really saying something serious. You know?
Yeah, my house is like 70% joke time and 30% serious. So yeah, even if we sound serious, my dad is a yeller, so like even if he sounds serious, he's half the time not. So yeah, it just depends on like how you approach it. With my dad, I do have to tiptoe sometimes, because he can be very sensitive. Like he feel like he's being attacked easily. Yeah. So I do have to come at him in a different approach sometimes. But I think, you know, we've had some hard conversations, you know, where it's not so serious. But yeah, I think it really depends on like the situation and what we're talking about.
So with my mom, I grew up with my mom like as one of our friends. Like she really just kind of played that friend role, like let us get away with stuff, and you know, she was just the fun mom. And my dad was more of the strict parent overall. But now, like my dad is, I feel like we're building a friendship now. Like he travels with us when we travel, like turn up. Like when I was younger, I could never have thought that I'd be in Jamaica turning up, taking shots with my dad. Like that's just not something that, it's really like once I turned 18, I didn't get a dad anymore. Like I got a friend. Yeah. And not to say that if I went to him with any like dad stuff, like, you know, he'd have it covered. But right now I think we're really like working on building our relationship like a friendship, like where we can just talk about anything.
Yeah.
So like my mom is the person who, like, if I'm in a car, we be on FaceTime, blah blah blah. But my dad, I'll call him. We talk maybe once or twice a week, but when we talk, we literally be on the phone 3 or 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like I be at work doing stuff and we just on the phone. So like I can't say that I have really good relationships with both of my parents now. I mean, nothing is perfect, and I don't think I've ever had any of those like hard conversations. Mm-hmm. And part of me is just like, are they worth having? Like, I've worked through stuff myself. Like, is it necessary to even bring it? Like, if it comes up, it comes up. But it's not to the point where I'm like, okay, we all need to sit down and have this deep talk. Like, it's just, I just don't deem it necessary. Like, I'm cool.
Yeah, that's honestly how I feel too. Like, I feel like I've just matured and grown, like, in a way where I'm like, okay, like, I acknowledge that stuff happened, but it's not to the point where I feel like I need to have a conversation for the sake of my healing. You know? But I do think it's important, like, as we grow into adults, that we begin to build like those friendships with our parents, because I feel like that makes conversations a lot more easier and more like transparency. So I like that.
Yeah, I think the main thing about talking about it with them for me is like, it helps me to not pass it on to my kids. Like, and it also helps me to make sure that there's open, you know, communication and relationship with my kids and their grandparents, and that you're not going to do the same thing to me that you did to my kids. Like, that's unacceptable. So we're going to make it sure we clear it up now, so that in the future you know what I expect from you as a grandparent.
But do you think it's because you live with them too? Like, I don't have, like, you have more of a close interaction with your parents on a daily, like, to, like, kind of have space for those conversations to just happen.
Maybe. I feel like even when I move out, I'm gonna always be over there. So, I don't know. Maybe.
Like, because I can't imagine, like, yes, I go to my parents' house, but, like, I wouldn't call and be like, so, you know, in the 3rd grade, when you told me, like, you see, like, that is a conversation that more so might happen if we were just chilling around the house and, like, just having conversation.
I'd be weird like that, though. Like, if my mother knows, if I'm on the phone and, like, I'm telling her a story and I'd be like, and it made me remember when we was younger, and like, I do that kind of stuff. Cause y'all know, like, in-depth conversation is my thing. Yeah. So, like, I really be like, you know, and I really just realized that, yeah, I be doing that.
Yeah, I don't think that I've ever had those conversations. Like, it's been stuff that's mentioned here and there, but it's never like a deep dive into anything. Yeah. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm honestly okay with that too. Like, I don't know. It'll just be weird for me to just have that conversation now. Because I think it's because I'm not in my parents' household. So it's like.
But in terms of the grandparents thing, parents are never the same parents.
They're not.
Oh,
they're not.
They are
absolutely not.
They're not.
Absolutely not.
I'm saying that now. Yeah. It's really
they get a whole different person.
They do.
It's unfortunate.
All right, y'all. Well, that is a wrap on season 3, episode 8. Thank y'all for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, send to your friends, and tell us about your family.
We want to know.
We want to know the tea.
All right.
Bye.